Afterwards.
Coming after. Hello, welcome to this session on the ocean, the largest economic opportunity, but also one of the biggest challenges we have in the world. We're going to talk a bit about what we can do systemically in different types of capital combining to solve the big problems. So you might know the ocean is one of the biggest, or the biggest natural resource we have in the world. Supplies more than half, 70% of the oxygen, biggest carbon capture sink we have in the world, biggest habitat of life on the earth, and an essential part of life on earth. So we're halfway through the ocean decade. We are way behind on the goals and what we need for actually making the ocean be sustainable. And we need to scale up the efforts. And we need to do that with what we believe systemic change and system change, investing, combining capitals, orchestrating and and leveraging the important solutions for both a better ocean and a better economy based on a sustainable rigid ocean. So Britta here is gonna talk a bit about system change investing and why this is important right now. And then you're gonna have a panel come up and representing different sectors and how we can collaborate on this change we need. So systemic investing as a thing has been emerging in the last 5 years as a way of focusing on collaborating, combining, and orchestrating different types of capital for more systemic change. And it's very much about blending finance and orchestrating, finding leverage points, and finding the important things to to shift in collaboration. So Britta, you've been can tell a bit about yourself, but also working with systemic investing course in the University of Zurich. You want to tell a bit about what you've seen and learned there?
Yeah, hi everyone. Great that you're all interested in systems change for the oceans. So I'm Britta, I'm based in Switzerland. And in Switzerland, I was part of building up the Center for Sustainable Finance and Private Wealth at the university in Zurich. And we're collaborating with, initially was Harvard, now it's MIT mostly. You know, in the beginning, we were educating wealth holders how to become impact investors. And the focus at that time was, if you are able to invest with your money into solutions that would otherwise not exist in the world, that is great additionality. So what has changed since then is that's great, and we should all do that with our money. But at the same time, what happens if we're all just focusing on individual projects and they don't interlink at the higher level? And so that is where the traditional systems thinking, right, that we know very well from, you know, other disciplines like biology and so on, like life is a system. So of course, that's how we need to think about it. But it has been now integrated into the way that we think about using capital for good. And like one of the ways that we are thinking about that is to use all the types of capital. So not only the investment capital, but also the businesses, right? Operating businesses to use your own time and skills. To use, of course, also the coordination possibilities of government, right? We talked about that yesterday as well. So how is it possible to have this multi-stakeholder coalition that has the same kind of vision for what is wrong with the current system? What might the future system look like? What is the reason why we're not there yet? And how could we tackle that in a coordinated fashion together? And so the university has just published a guide on that, and we have done the first 2 training courses. It's very much an emerging field. It's not something that is established. So everyone who is now engaging is kind of a co-creator and a pioneer, which is actually really exciting.
Yeah, and it's actually very exciting because there's a lot of new things being developed, frameworks, new instruments, vehicles that combine different capitals. There's a lot going on around bioregional projects around the world. That's also a systemic mechanism. So quite optimistic development, but we are and Katapult Ocean together with MIT and Builders Vision have started developing a big ocean system change investing project to make the kind of the map and the overarching vehicle that can help us do this together. And it's not really all about investment, it's also philanthropic, politics, policy and business, everything together. And the map we have made so far is it starts with thriving nature as the one part that we need to ensure that nature is thriving. On top of that, you have thriving communities. And on top of that, you have thriving business. So the business needs to be on top of a thriving nature and communities. And so this project we've been developing and will go far beyond what we do in Katapult Ocean, which is mostly early stage impact solutions and also ecosystem building. But it's meant as more of a, it's going to be in a independent, neutral backbone organization that can really enable everybody to collaborate more. So that's what we see as important here, and that's why we're going to bring together some people around that. But you want to also frame a little bit what we're here for?
Well, I think like one thing that is an interesting thing to think about when you think about systems change here is like you can either focus on a local or a global problem or system, and you can focus either on an issue specific or a general thing. So it's just to help you think about this a little bit, right? So either you could say, for example, we want to make Melbourne a regenerative city. That is one of the examples that is actually existing out there. So it's very local specific, but issue generalistic. So they're then engaging the local population to make sense of what do we want. And one thing is, for example, we want to have a swimmable river. Wouldn't that be awesome, right? So, but then if we are now looking at oceans and like the way that you have been just doing this is just so cutting edge. And that would be an example of like a topic specific but global thing. So just to give you a bit of a framing of how we can think about systems change and what kinds of things might be there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to do the
Yeah. So I always care about, that everyone here is not just, in that sense, consuming and sitting there, but also having a little bit of an experience. So I would invite you to just close your eyes for a moment. It's maybe actually nice with the sun hitting your eyes anyway. So a bit of a relief. So just invite you to close your eyes for a few minutes. To become aware of your breath. And then to pay attention to the sound of the ocean. And let that sound of the ocean connect you to all the living beings that are around us in this current ecosystem that we are in. We can start with just expanding our consciousness to all the beings on this boat. And then the beings below the boat in the ocean. Animals, plants. And then let it expand even further to encompass all the beings in this region. And further in the whole of the Oslo Fjord. And let the ocean connect you further to the waterways of Europe. And finally, as we all know, a drop that is in the ocean here now could have been on the other side of the planet. So let's just get connected to the entirety of our planet, as it is always connected through the oceans. And from this beautiful perspective of this little blue dot that we are in the bigger picture, let's travel back quickly in time when you were a child. And think back in which ways you have always enjoyed the oceans. What kind of memories come up? How you've connected with others around the water. how you started to become really curious about the mysteries that lie below the horizon. And now become aware of all the little ways in which you might have already started to help the ocean. Maybe you found a little piece of plastic and you threw it away. Maybe you've been part of a bigger initiative, together with your friends or family. Maybe it is part of your calling, of your current career path. And maybe you've contributed some of your money to a good cause relating to the oceans. Just become aware of the little and big ways in which you have been a helper and co-conspirator for the oceans. And then imagine that today on this boat we land for the first time in this body at this time in history with everything that we have available, all our resources, all our knowledge, all our connections, everything we have to contribute with our current awareness of what is needed. So I invite you now to just become curious. If nothing has mattered what you have done so far in your life, what would be the best way that you could contribute to the oceans from now onwards? And then taking a deep breath in, remembering what is important to remember. And in your own space and time, you can start to come back and open the eyes again. And maybe just turn to your neighbor and for a minute each, just share a little bit. What has come up here? What is important? And when you see me raise my hand, then please raise your hand as well, and at the same time, close your mouth so we can then go onward with the program, because it's going to be probably a really good conversation.
Good.
Think about that because I did a road trip this summer in Norges for when you drive around, you start drive on the road. Like everything is connected, right? So I can just take my car and drive somewhere and I can see it. Like a good
Yeah.
sometimes you can go on the train and just like transform
Yeah, it feels, yeah, you
just like
don't see the continuousness.
it's like okay, everything
Yeah,
this leads to this one, this leads to this one.
yeah.
And I also think about this when I invest.
Thank you.
I meet the person today.
Yeah. Yeah, there's like
All right, everyone. To be continued. We always know that it's never enough time, but you can continue this. There will be food, there will be drinks, more to talk about. So maybe just to hear like one or two voices, right? Something, did something really strike you? Somebody wants to share something. Yeah.
It was a beautiful pause in this chaos.
Right.
Yeah, so thank you.
Welcome. It's so important to just become present to the simple things, right? Thanks. There was another hand up, maybe one more. Yeah.
And I will share for my conversation partner and myself because he talked about how it's cool to actually feel the connectedness, right? And kind of what you're doing and in his case, how we're investing. And I think for me, the big realization was holding myself and my organization to account, right? For how are we actually using the resources that we have to kind of solve something that is so urgent.
Love that. Thanks for sharing. All right, so I'll step out And you're going to invite the others.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks.
And then we can have the panel come up. So Carolina, Natalia, Martin and Ross come up on stage, and now we have to solve this challenge. Okay. I'm actually going to sit here because I'm the moderator now, so you guys can have more space. Much better. So, Carolina, if you want to maybe introduce yourself, you work with the WWF, probably one of the leading organizations knowing what's going on, what the need is. Do you want to tell a bit about you and what you see and what's an optimistic view, or at least what can we do?
Realistic view.
Yeah, realistic.
Hi everybody. My name is Carolina Ander. I'm the CEO on WWF here in Norway. We are about 75 people working both to change environmental policy in Norway, but actually our biggest budget and staff is working under development linked to different environmental and climate issues. So I've been the CEO for 5 years, but I've been with WWF for 16 years and started as an advisor for sustainable seafood. And I don't have any background in environment, marine biology or anything. I'm a social anthropologist and also have a degree in social psychology. But I grew up near the ocean. And for me, this exercise we just have is quite different because I connect with the ocean by looking at the ocean, experiencing the ocean from land, linked to sound, wind, all of that. And just, it makes sense to take care of the ocean. I don't need to know what's under there to dive or to fish or anything like that. And that's how I see kind of how we are working in a conservation organization all over the world. That how we look to nature, how do we look on conservation is very different depending on culture, how you grew up, what kind of ecosystem you are part of. In that sense, you work in the corporate sector, the government, and so on. When it comes to the ocean, I think it's been many of the same questions for quite a long time, looking into Sol. And I just were at this previous panel, which was about are we good in protecting the ocean here in Norway? And the clear answer is no, even though we have a perception that we are really good at it. What we are really good at is utilizing the resources the ocean gives to us. So whenever Norway and many other nations, particular ocean nations, is looking through the ocean, is through a lens how we can utilize the resources one way or the other. How can we make money out of the ocean? With different labels for different reasons, food security, energy, transportation, so on. And I think I'm optimistic in that sense that we have maybe a little bit of a different conversation now. If we reverse it in terms of kind of what kind of activity can we do to have a healthy ocean ecosystem, to have a healthy ocean that continues to produce food, other essential needs for us, but what activities can we then have? Instead of saying these are the activities we want and we need to have some regulation and restriction to it, but it's not set on the base of the ocean capacity or what the ocean, the nature there, the marine wildlife need. So changing that perspective, start with protection and then find out which kind of activity you can have within that.
Thank you. Very good. And Natalia, you want to go next? Working from Hög Outlander, leading player in the car shipping, and then doing, as far as I can see, one of the players doing actually quite a bit on decarbonized shipping.
Yes, so Hög Autoliners is a Norwegian independent ship owner, global operator. We have about 40 vessels that are essentially like huge parking lots, right? Like, I mean, huge, like a few of these buildings put together. I think the reason why we're honored to be invited to participate is because we will be the first in our industry segment and actually in the shipping industry to have ammonia engines on water in July 2027. So that's way ahead of the IMO regulation we'll talk about later. That's way ahead of some of the other, for sure players in our segment, but also in the rest of the shipping segment. And I think for for us as a company, I think for our management team, for our board and our owners, I think it was a very it's a non-negotiable decision, and I think we have this privilege of investing into assets that will be around for 20, 25, 30 years, and I think that gives a lot of clarity, right? So we may not know what happens in 7 days on the Trump administration, but we know what's going to be there in 7 years, in 17, 27, and it's almost like our duty to our investors is to put assets on water that will actually not be stranded assets, in 7, 17, 27 years. So for us, when we invested in the ammonia engines in 2021, we were called crazy by everybody who could care to have an opinion. But I think the reality is, it's right. Shipping contributes 3% of the global emissions. I mean, it doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a hard to abate sector, and something has to happen, right? And I think the reality is that we can go so far on operational improvements and AI, but at the end of the day, we still need to burn fuel to propel our vessels, and that fuel needs to be not fuel, oil, and VLSFO anymore. So I think from a private kind of business perspective, I think what we're also seeing is that we can't solve it alone at all, right? And I mean, it's very clear that we're part of a value chain where we're going to have to source the ammonia from somewhere. That ammonia is going to have to actually make it into our ship, which is a whole other story, right? And only then we'll be able to burn it, and then only then we might be able to get our customers to actually cover some of the premium, right? So I think the big realization for us, it's extremely uncomfortable for us as a company and as an industry, but we have to actually work as part of a integrated value chain, which we really hate, don't know how to do it, but we must, right? Because otherwise we'll have very pretty ammonia engines, but we'll be still burning VLSFO in the alternative tank. So I think this kind of conversations are extremely important, because I think it's almost like sanitizing people to kind of, at least the shipping industry as I've come to know it, as to kind of really work across, right, the supply chain, let alone across industries, to kind of solve and accelerate some of the solutions that are, from a technical point of view, already available.
Thank you. Ross, you want to tell a bit about, from Katapult Ocean, about the ocean investing, early stage, and overall potential for new solutions, positive for the ocean, but also for good business?
I'll try. There's a lot to cover in 1.5 minutes, maybe. But congratulations first, actually, to Hög, because this is a company really making moves, and it's interesting that this is seen as taking a risk, right? It's a risk to invest for the future, which is kind of a strange dichotomy, which I think we're all faced with. That's why we're here today, maybe. My name is Ross Brooks. I'm an investment director. I'm one of the general partners at Katapult Ocean. We are the most active ocean tech venture capital fund in the world. We're small but mighty, a 7-person team based out of Oslo. We've been investing since 2019 across 4 domains, so food, water, marine transportation, circular resources, and blue carbon. And we've invested in 77 companies so far. We raise funds essentially from private investors, so we're really trying to mobilize capital. Capital is an important part of the system we're in, and we're trying to build links between different parts of the capital system to make this all spin a lot faster. I think the way I see this conundrum, right, and I was talking to Tarol, like how do we frame this? And I'm an economist by training. We're in this world where we're on the cusp of spending about $360 billion. That's the Mag 7. We'll spend $360 billion this year on AI data center infrastructure. So we don't even know if we want AI or AGI. It might be very dangerous, probably going to be a lot of value in the very short term, and probably those rents will be competed away. And we're in the ocean decade. We're 5 years in. There's probably less than $1 billion going into ocean funds currently. And the ocean is valued, I think it's a WWF estimate actually, about $24 trillion. Total, that's it. So we're saying that the Mag 7's data center infrastructure spend is about 2% of the entire value of the ocean and all life on the planet. That's 1 year spend. It doesn't make any sense. So how do we leverage this system? How do we kind of take control of our capital, of our pensions, of our politics, to try and actually, move things in the direction we all need things to move in, and correct this obvious and severe market failure. Thank you.
Thank you. And Martin, you work with Rev and Hub Ocean and the Matcher platform. extension of the Aker system, but many non-profit impact setup. Can you tell a bit about both the philanthropic side, Rev, and the matching platform trying to mobilize more capital towards philanthropic projects for the ocean, and the data platform, which is all very relevant for this?
Sure. Thank you, first of all, for letting me come here and speak today. But I think Martin Moen, that's my name, and I have many hats. I'm a CFO in RevOcean. I was part of the funding team with Nina back in the days, 2020, 2017. I'm also part of the funding team and also the current CFO of HubOcean, which is building an ocean data platform, and a former colleague, Inge, is here today. It's good to see you, Inge. And I'm also the proud initiator of something called the Ocean Matcher platform, which is trying to bridge a lot of the problems that we've been seeing for the last couple of years in philanthropy and building an ocean data platform, and trying to create a tool that is actually matching science project, conservation program, tech development ideas with the right philanthropist and the investors in due course at the right point in time. Because what we see, and this is me observing the space from the sideline for the last 8 or so years, things are moving slow as hell. Sorry for swearing there, but it's really moving slow, and we have to do something in a different way. Status quo is not good enough. And what we have done is trying to create an AI tool, an LLMs that is really building into the system and creating something that is measurable and tangible for users, getting more funding to happen and fixing this funding challenge. Just want to say this, when it comes to facts and stats, only 1% of philanthropy money goes towards the ocean. It's way too little. And if you look at public funding, the number is actually lower. So we're talking about something that is central for us human beings, is central for the earth, but yet we spend so little. So if we can get philanthropy, and I'm coming from the philanthropy angle, I'm going to try to break that as best as I can with the people that we're working with. But if we can also connect that with investors, the business, the governments, and we have similar data system, we have good ways to manage this together, using data, using ships and platforms, then I think we're onto something good instead of just talking. And I just want to say, what is RevOcean? Because many of you probably have some thinking of what this ship is. And it's a ship, and it will be launched at the 1st of January of 2027. We're opening for calls pretty soon, and it's going to be a 200-meter state-of-the-art research ship that will be offered 2/3 of the time to scientists to conduct science globally. That's what we're doing. So we're bringing an asset to the world like scientists and conservation programs and others can utilize, similar to people that you have in your program, actually come on board and do real solution work. And HubOcean is a data platform, which is building a cloud-based infrastructure to make sure that scientists, businesses also have this, you can almost say breaking down the silos when it comes to data, making sure that that data is being utilized in the best way. So we have basically 3 platforms I'm working on. RevOcean, which is a floating ship. You have a data platform that is building or providing cloud infrastructure to the scientists of the world. And then you have this matchmaking platform that is trying to do something with the funding gap that we experience.
Yeah, very good. And I've framed a bit different perspectives here. I think, like you said, less than 1% of philanthropy go towards the ocean. Less than 1% of venture capital and risk capital go towards the ocean. It is, I would claim, definitely half the value and nature we need, so it's insanely underinvested. And there's need to mobilize more and make people understand that. And there's also a need to combine and collaborate with philanthropy. What we see is the philanthropic space in the ocean is very siloed compared with the impact investing and the corporates. And philanthropy mostly go to research and marine protected areas, which is very important, but to kind of bridge it and make combination where we can find new solutions, including the conservation and philanthropy, to bridge that to the corporate is what we really need. So I think that there's really big potential, but also big challenges in getting this thing to work together. And Caroline, I want to ask you, now that we have talked with, there's a lot of opportunities, we think, in investing in solution technology and bringing in that, but there's also some challenges, and corporate businesses, of course, is one of the threats. And what do you see as the opportunity of new technology investments and businesses versus the challenges and things that's not so good and we need to stay away from?
Yeah, very good and big question at the same time. I think when we look at the ocean, we talk about all kind of ocean investments and like all ocean sectors as the same, but they're quite different, right? If you talk about the seafood sector, the shipping sector, or the maritime sector, oil and gas industry, offshore wind farms, aquaculture, it's a lot of sectors with very different needs from the ocean and also different impacts. And I think that is one of the key challenges in terms of kind of how do we make ecosystem out of that in terms of kind of what do you want to achieve. And so, for example, here in Norway, we have something called ecosystem-based management plans for all of our ocean areas. There we have two kind of goals. Some of the goals goes in terms we want a good environmental status, which we haven't defined necessarily what means or how to measure. So in the last update on the ocean management plans, there's no idea if actually we're managing the ocean up to the good standards we want in terms of environment. Then we have the other goals in the management plans, which is linked to corporate or kind of linked to different sectors in terms of kind of having more fisheries, more shipping, more oil and gas, more basically economic opportunities within the ocean. All of those goals are reached. Right? So there is clearly an incentive to reach some of the goals, but the others are not. And I think that is very kind of, we see for a long time now, is kind of that balance isn't struck right. And then we're talking about new technology, what they can enable us to do. And I think part of the new technology is, for example, data collecting, but then it's a matter of how do we use the data? What are the data meant to use for? We need to have a proper discussion, not just making all of the data available. And one of the key things also with new technology that we get access to, for example, the seabed, which is now very attractive to deep seabed mining. And that is technological, doable, so why shouldn't we do it? We have the technology, we can do it. That is our last wildlife, that is our last untouched area, and we don't know the impact of it at all. But again, it's not about how we do it from kind of a precautionary and science-led perspective. It comes from an economic opportunity where technology can make it safe, so to speak. And that is safe in terms of operation and economic interest. It's not safe for the ocean or the marine wildlife. So I think when we're now looking forward in terms of, and I also think it's so funny, I've talked a lot to Katapult Ocean. We have been partners and being part of these more impact venture talks, which is not kind of very WWF to be part of. It's kind of how do we make this very concrete, what we're talking about. And I think that is the examples in the intro from Melbourne, kind of what they want to be. We have to be that concrete about the ocean. So for example, Oslofjord was mentioned, which we talk a lot about here in Norway. Kind of what does it mean to have a healthy Oslofjord, for whom and for what? We have to identify that first and that find out how do we then get there with the local population around it, with the fishermen, with all of the stewards of that Oslofjord. So we have to make it very concrete on what we not need, because if you talk about systemic change, we lose most of the people. If you talk about ecosystem of investors, what does that actually mean? Right? So we have to be very concrete on in terms of areas or sector and what do we want to achieve and for what reason.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ross, I think I'm going to jump to you to ask, like, we need lots more solutions, lots more investments, and there are a lot of opportunities to find solutions that can be positive for the ocean and, for example, be good business. Thinking about Holba, for example, give some examples of things that we've seen that is like win-win-win for the for the environment and for business. Do you want to? Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So yeah, win-win-win as far as we know. I think I want to just shout out the importance of data, because we don't know what is valuable until we know what's actually going on. So yeah, we've invested into a lot of companies over the years. I think one very interesting example of something which is win-win-win quite clearly is seaweed farming. So food, biostimulant, protein, no need for land. You're absorbing excess nutrients from the water body, and you can build new materials. You can have biostimulants for land, for increasing crop yields. So it's a quite nice kind of cradle-to-cradle land-ocean nexus type company, and there's an awful lot of space. So we can scale these businesses and create a massive food system impact, whilst also increasing ecology, fishery yield in local areas, and the complexity of those ecosystems. Hulbot's quite an interesting example. This is a small robot you'd have on the side of a vessel, which would autonomously deploy and scrub one week's worth of slime off a boat by itself. It'll increase the fuel efficiency for large vessels by about 10%. So very interesting, for example, ferry owners, and they're developing now a big bot which will go on to large ships. I'll talk to you later about that one. They've also harnessed this technology to go and drill sea urchins. So you have a large project with sea urchin barons. They go and they eat kelp essentially and destroy ecosystems. They don't stop until everything's gone. Then their road disappears, so they're not worth anything to harvest anymore. Anyway, so Hulbot can install a drill on this robot and go and drill and destroy these oysters. Whether that's negative or positive, I see that's a net positive. Hopefully you agree, Carolina. But an example of something which is built out of an impact, has an extreme industrial application, but also has a very interesting natural capital application as well. I could definitely go on listing solutions, but I don't think that's too interesting. I think maybe to highlight some of the gaps though in this ecosystem, we're investing into hardware, hard tech stuff which takes a bit more time. I think we need to kind of change our timeline expectations a little bit in the venture capital world to meet the demands of these companies. We've been kind of spoilt, I think, for the last 30 years in this ecosystem by the dot-com boom and then the soft B2B SaaS boom. And now we're able to scale companies with AI in a matter of hundreds of days, probably, to huge revenue numbers. But going back to the roots of creating new stuff, we need to be able to, when all is said and done, when we don't have rents coming from software anymore, I really think there'll be a renaissance of hardware. And I think the ocean landscape is very well positioned to capture that investment and that value. There'll be defensibility in hardware, there'll be defensibility in experience, consumer brands. This is the areas where, in a post-AI world, we will need to be able to compete to find returns. And I think that's hopefully, I see a positive light there, which might be a big flip in capital coming back to hard tech. And we need to go back to what venture was actually invented for, creating new stuff of value and building into markets and building markets rather than copying and pasting existing tech into new applications which are erosive of social and environmental capital oftentimes. I went off piece,
Carolina.
Sea urchin, which is a very interesting case because we have that in the north of Norway, and the project in itself is good, and I don't have anything against that. The main thing is that why is the sea urchin become a problem? And that is because we have overfished their predators. Their natural predators are gone, then we have the challenge with sea urchin. Because the nature actually takes care of itself if they're allowed to have in the ecosystem. So this project in itself is good, but how do we address the systemic change that is needed, which is getting the predators, natural predators back to into this area, which is, I don't know the English word, steinbit, which we have overfished, wolfish? Yeah, wolfish, that we have overfished, which we haven't had any quotas on, it's been allowed to take bycatch on, and so on. And it's also not been done a lot of research on it. But that's the main reason why we have this increase in sea urchins. So if we want to look at long-term solution, that is really the key things we need to solve and getting the systemic change for.
Mm.
I like the project.
I agree. The main business is in the ship stuff.
And I want to, on our investments in the early stage, it's a tough thing, especially hardware. What we need is that there is a whole life value chain for like what's next, and getting into the the business and corporates like Hulbot with the shipping players and getting to not only how can the your industry, for example, that is a polluter and 3% is quite a bit, but it's also one of the most important transport sectors and quite low on emissions compared to other transport. But what you're doing, but also what the IMO regulations that is on the way to being implemented or like decided on, is something that is quite revolutionary in the world for carbon tax and the whole industry, that will enable and shift focus to the startups that invest and enable new solutions because of that thing. So you want to talk a bit more about where that is and what that can do? Because I think it's
Yeah,
really
sure.
exciting.
And I'll say a bit, and a lot of it has been said today already. So stop me if I'm saying obvious things. But essentially, yes, in April, IMO, which is kind of a regulatory body for global maritime industry, actually agreed on a net zero fuel on a net zero framework, which if it gets adopted, not voted on, but adopted in the October session, will essentially have put in place the first ever global carbon tax. Yeah. Now, just to give you an example of the impact of that, without this regulation, my kind of premium for blue or green ammonia versus my conventional fuel in 2028 is anywhere between 2 to 4x. Yeah, and for an industry that competes, right, kind of on the voyage cost where fuel is all of it, it's kind of not tenable, right? Now, under this IMO proposed framework, blue ammonia would be competitive with my conventional fuel, kind of given the net penalties and net incentives under IMO and ETS. So it's huge. It's actually huge. So if it goes ahead, I will literally go out and I will sign an ammonia offtake contract. That's how kind of transformative it is, right? But I think, so I mean, that is what it is, right? And yes, that will create, that will really radically shift the relative cost, but also then relative advantage of anything related to anything to operations, right? Kind of anything that essentially reduces my fuel bill will become all of a sudden even more attractive. It will shift the relative economics of conventional fuel versus biofuel or ammonia or methanol, whatever you like. So it will be transformative. Now, we kind of are optimistic and hopeful. It's not yet in the bag, but I think that will create, I think there will be a world before that regulation and a world after that regulation in terms of like just certainty to invest in certain things. I do want to say, and I'm new in the shipping industry, right? I'm 5 months on the job. Like, yeah, so sorry. Like, I don't know that much. But like, what I do see is that what we are missing, and maybe because we're a small company, but I think there is much more kind of solutions and interesting solutions out there that could make business case for us than we are aware of, or we have the resources and kind of the patience and kind of the managerial attention to actually watch and kind of match with. So I do think there's something about kind of orchestrating, and maybe it's not a whole systems, maybe it's not, that's just too much, but maybe like particular elements of value chains to kind of essentially make that matching a bit easier. Right? Because I mean, yeah, if we can build a business case that we can clean our hull at like whatever, same cost, but then in half the time, it's a no-brainer for me. But like I wouldn't know this, and my ops team, wouldn't exactly. So I think, but I really think it's we can make a joke about it, but I really do see it as an issue. And I mean, I don't see our biggest competitor doing much more. So it's not just my kind of problem as a small operator. So I really do think that it's not a shortage of capital, to be honest. I think there's something that's not connecting between capital and the right kind of sets of projects to kind of really pull through impact. And I'll give my super selfish example again. I have an ammonia producing asset in Norway or somewhere else that's funded, right? They don't need capex support. I have a partner in Asia that's prepared to build a bunkering barge. I have the engine on water. My problem, actually, if IMO is in place, is not even the delta in the price of the fuel, but the fact that I, as a company, have never taken on fuel risk. Like, I don't want to sign. I'm panically afraid of signing a contract for 5, 10, 15 years, which is what an ammonia producer wants, right? A very different problem. People want to give me money. I'm like, I don't need money. I needed a risky mechanism, right? So I think there's also something about being very pragmatic and creative in kind of the solutions that we need, and it does have to be across multiple parts of the value chain, and we need somebody to kind of have the patience for the exhausting job of orchestrating it.
Well, that's exactly why we're doing this social change investing project. That's going to be a global non-profit that is going to enable this orchestration, but we're not quite there yet. But yeah, Ross, you...
Microphone's back. It's not that far, is it? No, I think it's a great point, though. I think that's one thing we see in this ocean world. We're dealing with quite old businesses. They're quite fragmented. They're high rent, high capex, so they're very hard to disrupt oftentimes. Like, how do you go start a shipping company? Ask Agnes. She's over there somewhere with Brim if you actually want to know that to answer that question. But just examples of who's doing it really well. One of our partners in LPs is MOL Plus. That's Mitsui OSK Lines. Japanese group, Mitsui, you probably have heard of. They're probably one of the most active CVCs in the world now in terms of blue tech. And they're investing in blue social projects, they're investing in blue venture, they're investing out of their MOL Switch, California offices in carbon projects and decarbonization. And they've really committed to understanding their own kind of ignorance, and they want to learn, and they want to partner, invest in funds to make this all go faster. We've seen very little investment from shipping companies and ship owners into our funds from Norway. In fact, we're an ocean fund based in Oslo in the middle of the ocean decade, and I think about 2% of our AUM is actually from Norway. So Switzerland, USA, yeah, is what it is as well. So I think we're committed to engaging as part of the systems change work, to committing with corporates to help them understand what innovation is out there, to help integrate. We're an ecosystem builder. We want to make this happen faster. So yeah, if you know anybody who's struggling with ocean industrial challenges, then just point them in our direction. We will come with a handful of good solutions.
Cool. So Martin, I want to get back to you and your kind of broader portfolio, but I think we all agree the data is we see it as one of the most important things, data gathering, understanding the ocean, we know so little. But the platform, again, if you look at this and mobilizing but allocating and orchestrating, what do you see that, what's your ambition if you look like 5 years ahead? What could you achieve with that helps us all with this?
Yeah, so just want to make the distinction as well. I'm working with two data platforms. One is the Ocean Matcher, and the other is the Ocean Data Platform, which serves two different purposes currently. But I just want to answer that question a little bit before. Before I started in RevOcean, I worked in shipping. I worked in oil and gas. I worked for the financial services that support them. I worked for fisheries. And what strikes me is these are traditional companies with low margins. So you can't really go and implement a lot of crazy new tech because you do it as you do it. There's long contracts. You don't have the budget to go through the technology development. Now we're placing new burdens on them. Carbon, taxes, they have to work in different ways. That tech has not yet been developed. So how do you make sure that you get the right engineer, the right people that can actually start working on this? And that's why I think your accelerator programs are really important, but also the way we work with Ocean Matcher, where a lot of the solutions are in the science institutes, are in some of these, you can call it almost like scientific accelerators, and getting their ideas connected with, and I call it non-bankable cash, which is philanthropy money. It's basically philanthropy, investor money with not the profit returns, but more impact returns, right? But that funds can actually be utilized to de-risk the investment and get to the investor at a later point in time. But we need to make sure that these system works together. So if an investors are over here and you can't get to the ID and it's just not bankable enough, you need the system to pick that up and you can send it into something like the Ocean Matcher. The philanthropists are involved, they want impact, they want to see that solution in the marketplace. But then again, it's back to data, right? So I think the question you gave me was like, how do we make sure that data is being utilized in a good way? For the Ocean Matcher, it's basically picking up the good ideas, connecting with the right people at the right point in time, using AI and LLMs, that's what we do. And for the Ocean Data Platform that we worked with Carolina a little bit before on it's like connecting those siloed ocean data and making sure people actually get access to data they didn't know about. So it could be Hög has a ferry box collecting water sample. How do the WWF scientists know about this if they want to do an assessment of certain shipping lanes, right? And it's getting that connection to those different data points and make it available for more people. That's what we're trying to do in Hub Ocean and the Ocean Data Platform. So that's basically those two working together.
Carolina?
Yeah, I think... Hello? Yeah. I think data is something we have talked too little about, because one thing is the data that the different research institute contributes with. Kind of there's the main thing they're generating that data that is going to be used for something, scientific research. It's proper, it takes time, and you need to have access to it. It's not that easy to get access to it. Then you have other databases, which is from more the corporate side, where you cost a lot of money to get out the data. So we in WWF, as an example, you have something called Rystad, which is one of the biggest kind of database for oil and gas projects and so on. So the oil and gas industry and renewable industry, mining industry, using that database as a key database to know about different things. We actually have bought a license to that data. It's extremely expensive, but we do it on behalf of the WWF network because it's the best data we have in order to create maps, to know what kind of solution we are going to talk to the government about. Lack of regulation, planned project, particular, for example, in Africa, where they don't have access to this data. So not having access to data for many countries, is particularly for civil society, has been a key barrier. So having more data available is taking away one of the key barriers. But then it's also open up the scientific community. And how can you have data from Hög, other shipping companies, as not substituting what the research institute is doing, but adding on. The same with the fishing industry. A lot of vessels are out in the ocean a lot of the time. It's immense. If you look at shipping lanes, AIS data, it's so much activity in the ocean, and you can use those data points. But how do we make that affordable, accessible, and transparent? Not being who can use them, what can you use them before? And not as a substitute for scientific research, but as an add-on in terms of having a better knowledge about the ocean.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And we have, me and Ross, one of our favorite investments that went bankrupt. Paddlelens was a super cool crowdsourced data gathering GoPro cameras for diving booths all over the world, and then open data gathering for the world. And there's so many solutions needed for that. But yeah, and I think we're going to open up a bit. If you want to talk about what do you feel is important here, and how can we tie this together to fix the ocean?
You're asking me?
All of you.
I can give like a high level, kind of slightly grumpy wrap up. No, but I think reflecting on this over the holidays, we all say we care about the ocean, but care over my lifetime, I think it's become less of a verb. To care is like to give a shit, but to give a shit isn't actually to care. The definition of caring is to provide the resources for something to be sustained, to take care of something or someone. It's an active thing. So at Katapult Ocean, we care. We care urgently. We're caring aggressively, and I think that's what we need to do. So I challenge, I guess, the audience here. If you do care, then what are you doing to care actively to make sure that we have this this beautiful, majestic, connecting resource that we kind of need to live? Yeah, and also in terms of capital, there's like $60 trillion wrapped up in pension funds these days, and they're under the responsibility of trustees who are often obliged not to care in that definition, right? So if you have a pension pot, go and take ownership of it and make sure it's in the right place. Yeah, we buy cigarettes, we buy fast food. Don't invest in the future of your planet because it's too risky. I'll pass over to you.
That felt like a dig, but
I just had a burger. It wasn't the point.
Yeah, there you go. No, look, I do think that kind of the blue is where green was 10 years ago, and I think my hope is that we can be much quicker to kind of learn and mobilize from the green to kind of do the blue a bit quicker. I do think that and I fully recognize that emissions are only kind of part of the issue, but to be honest, from the little I see so far, we're not limited in terms of tech. I would say we're not even limited in terms of data. We're not limited in terms of capital. We just need to find ways to kind of quicker put the Lego blocks together and move, right? Because I think we can wait to have all the perfect data. We can wait, we can keep inventing robots. But I think there's already stuff there that we can start to put together and make work. And yeah, it's fucking heartbreaking that my CEO says, Nati, we're not here to change the world. We're here to make money for our shareholders. Right? It depresses me every day. But I think what we can do, right, is we can make kind of bolder, riskier decisions because we do invest in the long term, right? We've done that. I think what we can be much more mindfully with your help is a testing platform for some of the solutions you want to accelerate. We can share data, in a gentle way that is already available if it can be put to a valuable use case, right? That kind of people could benefit from. And I think we need a high metabolic rate of these things, because I think if Hug can do it, then there's no reason why Wavi can't do it, and they're 5 times the size, and then all of a sudden we're getting to critical mass. So I think it's metabolic rate of the right people in the room, but very specific ideas walking out with one. I think that's what's needed.
Yeah, Martin.
Yeah. I talked to in the US, Johan Bergnos, about this, and he said, what you need is 10% of domino chips to start moving, and then you get the ripple effect. So I really encourage, like, getting Hug, someone from to push him, will create a ripple effect. And I think that is the thing I'm always thinking about out there, and RevOcean is a big thing. HubOcean is a big thing on its own, but Ocean Matcher was just created because me and a couple of others said, let's fix it. Just starts with that conversation. It maybe start with me talking to Tara or some of you. Like, could we do something? And then we can't wait anymore. And I think this is the thing I feel the most. I have 3 kids going status quo, the complacency, like we can just go on with our life. No, we can't. We have to do something. And I think the first steps, connecting with the different tools that we can connect with. And one really important thing as well, there's a lot of technology out there in different sectors, in different industries that could potentially be connected to the blue industries. But then again, you need those connections. We have to get outside our community and we have to engage with others, normally not engaging with. So my kind of takeaway is start talking, start doing something.
Yeah, I think there is a lot of things we need to do. One thing is we talk about the 3 Ps, people, planet, and profit, as like a triangle and that they're all equal, but it hasn't been. It's been profit at the top for quite a while. So those companies who's talking about a kind of triple bottom line, how do you make them actually equal? How do you kind of monetize the P for it in a way? Because that's the challenge. You count what is in profit and what you can't put money on is not kind of part of a budget decision in the board discussions or investment thinking. So for example, research is seen as a cost over a state budget, or as a company, we are having a lot of cost links to research instead of seeing it as an investment. So it's just a language we use about it as well, kind of investing in research because we want something. It's not a cost, it's an investment with a return for us in terms that we're going to have a more healthy ecosystem. And I think I just make a small linking it back to oil and gas for the use of data as an example and using part of technology and the public narrative. So Norway, the Norwegian oil and gas industry has been really, really good in owning the public narrative about we are going to be poor as a country if we lose oil and gas industry. We are so interlinked with it, it's so important, and so, and there is a lot of numbers being thrown out and so on. WWF Norway used to work then on every kind of oil and gas project, for example in Lofoten, how do we stop that? In other vulnerable areas, how do we stop those projects? We actually stopped doing that a few years ago because we employed different people and we made the investment to have data from Rystad to just challenge the public narrative, challenge the Norwegian oil and gas sector, using the same numbers but with another story than they had. And that's more challenging for them as well because they haven't had any other people kind of challenging their public narrative on that. Using the same data, providing it to the politician, to decision maker, to the media, and having economists working at and doing financial analysis and so on, and not having a marine biology link. Part of that, how do we also have to change the way of working if we want to see some systemic change? And we have our whole strategy within WWF Norway is talking about systemic change instead of those simple projects, because we have focused on winning the different battles in the war, but not the war in itself. So we win the war, and therefore we're also now working on systemic change, which means also we have to work very differently, and which is sometimes frustrating. For example, like Katapult Ocean, we work with them, can you engage in this particular project? And we say no, because we are working in a higher level maybe now, really change the system itself, and our fundraiser, our communication people hates it, because how do you communicate work on systemic change? So it comes back to having these examples again. What does it mean? And if we need a concrete example to understand what it means.
Yeah, I think that's a good way. Like the narrative is more and more in system change and system change investing as a core thing. You need to work on the system change narrative in combination with the capital and the engagement activities. And I think one thing we're gonna I was going to engage the audience, but I think we're going to just have a mingling afterwards and hang around so people can talk then. And wrapping up, there's been on this systemic shift we need. It's like we need collaboration and orchestration between all this. On how do you make a thriving ocean and how do you make good business that's going to be the economic opportunity is insanely big if we can do much good business in the ocean in a sustainable and regenerative way. We need to just collaborate on doing that systemic shift. So thank you very much, and if people want to hang around and chat, there's popcorn, coffee and some drinks, so yeah.